The story begins with a daring raid by the Red Clan into the den of a mafia family. Under Mikoto's command, the Red Clan members gather to launch a surprise attack on the enemy's stronghold. They use various tactics and coordinate to infiltrate. One member disguised himself as a pizza delivery person to trick the guard into opening the door. As soon as the guard opened the door, the others, who were hiding in the darkness waiting for an opportunity to strike, immediately rushed out and cut the ropes. Upon receiving the order, Yata immediately jumped down, charged straight through the window, and in an instant took down all the troublemakers. Their objective was not to seize territory or assets, but to hunt down a specific individual who had purchased weapons from this organization. However, the poor quality photo made it impossible for the boss to identify the buyer. Mikoto, with his formidable superhuman abilities, led Anna, a young girl with the ability to see through everything in the world, even the darkest of hearts, and blasted through the walls. Anna approached the mafia boss to use her powers to extract information. However, the result was deeply disappointing. The boss knew nothing about the person the Red Clan was looking for. With no reason to continue, the group let the boss go and retreated. These people never use their own doors. Instead, they break through other people's ceilings to escape. Just then, a special task force arrived. Because of the great chaos caused by the Red Clan, regardless, breaking into someone else's house is still a crime. They confronted a group of equally formidable opponents called the Blue Clan, also known as the Special Forces, under the command of King Munakata. Tensions reached their peak, but the Red Clan showed no fear. Mikoto declared that they would fight this battle to the end without hesitation. Without hesitation, he leaped from a high place, and from his body erupted a fearsome pink flame. The Blue Clan used measuring devices to assess the power that the third king, Mikoto, unleashed. His power had now reached nearly 100%, creating an overwhelming pressure that made the air thick and heavy. Everything the flames touched was distorted and became extremely unstable. The flames soared skyward, forming a colossal Damocles sword. But the Blue Clan was not an easy opponent either. Once he drew his sword, they were not afraid to fight back. Their members simultaneously unleashed their powers, creating a counter field of force equivalent to Mikoto's power. The fields of force from both sides continuously clashed, with neither side yielding to the other. In the sky, two colossal swords appeared, symbolizing the authority of the two kings, heralding a fierce confrontation. Contrary to the intense tension of the battlefield, the people in the nearby city lived peacefully, going to school and work as usual. Students of Ashinaka Academy were even taken to school by subway. Ashinaka is one of the most modern and prestigious schools in the country, surrounded by high-tech products and even labor robots. The main character of the story is me, a young man with silver hair named Yashiro. Everyone knows me as an ordinary, friendly student with many friends, and quite popular with girls. However, despite appearances, I am not really close to anyone in particular, just know enough to beg for food everywhere. Even so, I have a big flaw. I can't eat vegetables and only like to eat meat. Kukuri, my classmate, knows this, so she cooks plenty of vegetables for me, but before she can give them to me, I ran away somewhere. I also have a bad habit of sneaking into restaurants to steal food, making the chef always wary. Kukuri often worries about my excessive eating habits. She tries to make me eat her lunchbox full of green vegetables, but in the end, I manage to escape her and run upstairs, leaving Kukuri to eat both lunchboxes herself. Her friends are sure that Kukuri has fallen in love with me, but Kukuri doesn't believe that it's unrequited love she has for me. She simply doesn't want this cheerful young man, who always acts mysteriously and is hard to predict, to disappear. Now I'm enjoying my lunch on the school rooftop, and this is my fluffy white cat that has followed me all the way to school. Why do people go to school happily, while I go to school like I'm going to prison? Just then, I was truly enjoying the peaceful moment, when a strange voice suddenly echoed in my head, making me jump and wake up. I even thought for a moment that the cat had spoken. When I went downstairs, I was surprised to see everyone in a buzz. A friend told me that the next class was canceled to prepare for the upcoming festival. Kukuri also came to inform me that the student council had assigned me a task because I always forgot to bring my PDA, an important mobile device necessary for entering and leaving the island. Kukuri had to write down instructions for me by hand and reminded me to find the PDA if I didn't want to be kept at school. My first task is to buy fireworks and bring the receipt back to the student council. On the way, I was unexpectedly discovered by members of Mikoto's gang. They recognized me as the spitting image of the person the Red Clan is hunting and immediately reported me. Shortly after, Yata, the Red Clan's skater boy, appeared and swung a baseball bat at me. I dodged by instinct, still not understanding what was happening. Yata checked again and confirmed I was indeed the target. Thus the chase began. I weaved through the streets and jumped onto a moving truck to escape Yata. But soon, 2 others on motorcycles came to attack, forcing me to get off the truck and run into a nearby alley. The Red Clan members were still pursuing me. In the alley, another Red Clan member was waiting and shot fire at me. But luckily, a mysterious young man appeared, extinguished the flames, and used his supernatural power to create an air hand that sent Yata flying into the sky. This mysterious man quietly helped me escape the encirclement. After escaping, I wanted to thank my savior, but he just gave me a blank look. The young man introduced himself as Kuro, a retainer of King Ichigen VII. Kuro's reason for hunting me was because he believed I was the reincarnation of the Demon King, according to Ichigen's prophecy, a king with foresight. At that moment, a video was broadcast throughout the city showing a young man calling himself the Demon King, the 7th king, and that person looked exactly like me. This made my denial impossible. Mikoto, the Red King, was currently imprisoned by the special unit, which explained why his group was acting so scattered and unplanned. I tried to explain that the person in the video wasn't me, but my face, identical to the one on the giant screen, looked completely convincing. Therefore, naturally, Kuro didn't believe me. After all, he was only following King Ichigen's orders, not common law. Realizing I couldn't escape, I asked Kuro to investigate further and said that if not, I would accept death. Hearing this, Kuro let me go to the toilet and escape. I started making up a story about a sister with cancer and expressed my wish not to let my sister think her brother was a murderer. With a pained expression, I asked Kuro to let me write a final letter. Although killing people didn't move Kuro, hearing my pitiful situation, he couldn't help but shed tears and ask more about my sister. I stepped forward to give Kuro the letter, which was actually a messy doodle, and asked Kuro to deliver it to my sister. However, the moment Kuro read the letter, he realized he had been deceived, but it was too late. I used a blinding flash hidden in my pocket to disorient Kuro and escape. After Kuro staggered away, I emerged from a crab costume. Just a few scratches, and even a professional assassin was fooled. But next time, I might not be so lucky. After this incident, Mikoto's gang put out a bounty of 10 million yen on me. This information was posted everywhere, and many calls came in with tips. Such a large sum of money indeed attracted many people, although some thought it was a hoax. Anna, a girl with telepathic abilities and another superpower that allowed her to use marbles to pinpoint locations, helped him quickly narrow down where I might be. Kusanagi sent out a mass message to dispatch scouts, and he didn't forget to warn them about the hawk. He was certain his subordinates couldn't handle that battle. Ever since news of the 10 million yen bounty spread, the public immediately buzzed. That amount was more than their annual salary. So how could they not be tempted? Although some people thought it was just a homer trip. I was still in my disguise as I moved around. But I wanted to make sure I wasn't discovered. As soon as I poked my head out of an alley, I saw Kuro looking for me, so I quickly retreated back inside to safety. Then Kuro ran into Yata, the skater with a baseball bat. Yata questioned Kuro about letting me escape, but suddenly I appeared on a rooftop, waving at both of them, inviting them to fight so I could catch one of them. Immediately, the hot-tempered Yata felt insulted. Don't mess with him. He would put down this red uniform and take me back to the organization. Yata lunged at Kuro, but Kuro wasn't to be outdone either. He controlled his invisible hands to rip apart the pavement and threw a billboard along with bricks at Yata. Yata was stuck in it but used his strength to push himself up, attacking Kuro, who dodged and countered by throwing Yata to the ground. Kuro then continued to chase me. But when he got to the rooftop, he didn't find anyone. I had once again escaped. This time, I returned to my hideout to escape safely. I was curled up on the bed, thinking about the identity of the man who looked like me in the video. My life from now on will be full of trouble. The cat I brought home suddenly turned into a naked girl lying next to me. She introduced herself as Neko. Seeing this sight, my face suddenly turned red. Even so, I am not a priest. Before long, the school day ended, and the students who were not on the festival support list were immediately asked to go home. Because he couldn't find me, Kuro tracked my scent to the school by following the badge I dropped, but he couldn't get in. He intended to break down the entire school with his power, but then Kukuri appeared and asked him what he was doing. Because Kuro looked suspicious and was acting strangely at the gate, she tentatively asked a few questions. Kuro immediately spoke my name. Upon hearing that familiar name, Kukuri agreed to lead Kuro to my office. Kuro solemnly nodded his head in thanks. There are not many people in this world willing to help others. His master told him so, and therefore he truly cherishes those who lend a hand during difficult times. At this moment, I was flustered by the sudden appearance of a naked girl in my room. I offered her clothes, but she refused to wear them because her nature was still that of a cat. Furthermore, Nico also had the ability to teleport instantly. I tried to give her a shirt, but she had already disappeared onto the wardrobe. Kukure's voice called from outside, and when I rushed out, I saw she had brought Kuro along. Kuro politely greeted me and casually inquired about my sister. After that, he used his power to fly straight into my room and draw his sword. I hurriedly fled. Seeing me about to be killed, Neko stepped out to block Kuro, because he is still a virgin. Kuro awkwardly turned his face away upon seeing such a comical scene, and at that moment, Nico and I seized the opportunity to escape. Neko warped space and created an illusion of an endlessly extending corridor to buy me time to run. As soon as she moved away, the corridor returned to normal, and I dashed outside. When Kuro caught up and tried to grab me with his power, Neko teleported Kuro elsewhere and created a giant cat illusion to hold him back. Of course, Kuro is very perceptive and did not waste much time on the cat. Thanks to that, she was able to save me temporarily. While running, I was still kind-hearted enough to help a girl pick up her dropped belongings. But the consequence of my kindness was that Kuro quickly caught up to me again. Just when it seemed like everything was over, Neko let out a meow and created an illusion to deceive Kuro. What he saw before him was a dead-end path, where one wrong step would lead to a fall into an abyss. In reality, Kuro was still standing right in front of me, but in the end, both Neko and I were driven into a corner. Neko created a wall to block Kuro, and he wondered how he could have been deceived so many times. Kuro rushed through the illusionary wall only to headbutt a real wall, making Nico burst into uncontrollable laughter. Neko always knew how to use illusions to deceive Kuro, turning a chase into a long night-long game of tag. All three were exhausted, but none of them stopped. In the end, being too tired, they returned to my room. Nico had used too much power, so her stomach kept rumbling. Thus, I decided to make her something to eat. Kuro was also hungry, so he reluctantly accepted this temporary truce. Little Nico was picky and didn't want to eat anything. Meanwhile, Kokuri, who wasn't there at the time, brought back the suitcase Kuro had left behind. Kuro was extremely grateful for her kindness and retrieved his forgotten suitcase. Inside Kuro's suitcase was his cooking equipment, and in the end, he cooked a magnificent meal for me. Once the food was ready, the three of us sat down to eat together, deciding to resolve our unresolved issues later. Meanwhile, at the detention center, Munakata, the leader of the Blue Clan, came to see Mikoto with an unfriendly demeanor. Mikoto was asleep, and Munakata seized his head and slammed it against the wall to wake him up for questioning. In their previous fight, things had gotten extremely intense. Munakata stepped forward and informed Mikoto that he had been captured. However, Mikoto didn't resist at all, and even voluntarily offered his hands to be cuffed. Munakata wanted to know why Mikoto had suddenly surrendered unconditionally and let himself be captured. Munakata worried that Mikoto was using his power to its limit. Currently, his aura's intensity has reached its peak, and if his Damocles sword in the sky goes out of control and falls, it could cause a catastrophe like Kagutsu, taking the lives of thousands of innocents. Mikoto explained that he let himself be captured so Munakata could keep an eye on him. If he showed signs of losing control, Munakata would be the one to stop him. Hearing such a willingness made Munakata feel nauseous. And besides, he couldn't spend 24 hours a day watching over Mikoto because he was busy and couldn't always be fighting him. Munakata then met his subordinate Seri to discuss options. They considered using heat-resistant materials to suppress Mikoto. Seri felt this was an opportunity to kill Mikoto as much as possible for research purposes, and proposed methods, such as injecting large doses of sedatives or muscle relaxants. Munakata was surprised by this bold plan and said he would think about it further. They also continued to investigate the case of the man who resembles me and discovered that the murder weapon is a type of gun commonly trafficked by the mafia. The leader of this supply line has disappeared, along with a truck full of explosives and enough weapons to open a store. The police have entered the fray in earnest. Therefore, Seri wants to cooperate with them to gather intelligence. Munakata wants to know everything that has happened in the city over the past 2 weeks. He must see and hear everything himself to believe it is accurate. The Red Clan also tries to suppress the videos that Mikoto's subordinates have uploaded online, turning them into worthless clips, and they cross-reference the suspect's face with criminal records, but with no results, hoping only that the Green Clan doesn't know anything about this yet. While the clans clash over my case, my two companions and I are still eating and chatting together. As for the Red Clan, they know the Red Clan is involved, so they spread the videos more widely to hunt down the culprit at all costs. Internal conflict also erupts within the Red Clan. Rikyo, one of its members, and Yata get into an argument and even a physical fight. A fight is one thing, but for some reason they fought in Kusanagi's bar, enraging him when his imported interior was damaged. He immediately grabs both of them and gives them a beating, demanding to know why they are fighting so fiercely. Rikyo believes that Mikoto was captured too easily and even implies he wants to work for the Green Clan. Yata, of course, cannot stand by when someone speaks ill of his boss. Kusanagi immediately starts laughing. Both apologize to the bar owner, and he tells them a story when he hears this. The two young men immediately seem to understand and nod their heads in apology. Kusanagi explains to them that Mikoto has accepted capture to force Munakata to constantly watch him. The Red Clan is actually holding a time bomb, but that situation also allows the Red Clan to operate freely outside without strict control. Hearing this, both happily return and leave in delight. After they leave, Anna immediately exposes Kusanagi's lie. Taking advantage of the quiet moment, I ask Kuro about the fiery men who chased me. Kuro explains they are teammates of those who were killed and are now seeking revenge. They are like the subordinates of a king, all gathered into an order. The Red King Mikoto is the king of the Third Order, and of all the kings, he is the most ruthless. Finally, I begin to vaguely understand. Perhaps I was mistaken for the murderer by this group of violent men. Kuro is sure there is no mistake. Those guys are definitely bastards. I will let the condemned enjoy their last meal and then deal with the condemned. Meanwhile, at the pier, the Red Klansmen found the weapons hidden in the containers as instructed by Kusanagi. This is where the syndicate boss disappeared. He wasn't the only one who vanished. Just then, Fushimi of the Red Clan appeared. He also betrayed the Red Clan. So when they met, their eyes turned red. After dealing with 2 Red Clan members, Fushimi immediately reported back to the Red Clan to call Seri. Kuro continued to tell me about the system of kings. He explained that there are a total of 7 kings, each ruling a color and possessing extraordinary abilities and powers. This world is run by the power of the kings themselves, and no government can stand against them. Even the greatest prime minister has to obey like a lapdog. Without the power of a king, Japan could fall from a superpower to a small vassal state bullied by other countries. The Gold King currently has great influence in economics and technology. Our company produces these phones. The Gold King represents the color gold. Mikade's order is the Red King, representing the color red and described as brutal and bloodthirsty. They often cause trouble everywhere and fear no one. Yata, a member of the Red Clan, is currently provoking the mafia. Those hounds kept bothering them and were provoked by a brat, making them angry. The mafia immediately drew their guns and fired. But how can they be a match for these naive youths? Yata easily dodged, killed one with a gunshot, heated it with his power, and stuck it into the faces of the mafia. Kuro also explained why he was hunting me. According to King Ichigan VII, the previous king who had the ability to foresee, I might be the successor of the 7th king. But Ichigan feared that a successor like me, possessing the power of a king, would be corrupted and bring disaster. So he ordered me to be eliminated to avoid future disaster. After saying this seriously, Kuro requested to kill me on the spot. However, I refused and asked for concrete proof that I am the successor king. Kuro then showed a video that Mikoto's faction had released, but I refuted it, asking if that was true and if I had such power, why would I have to run away from Mikoto's people? This made Kuro rethink. He also asked me who Neko was, and I said I didn't know her. Kuro realized Nisko was a strain, meaning a person with innate superpowers, not granted by any king. I promised Kuro that I would prove my innocence. Hearing this, Kuro decided to spare me for the time being, but warned that if he discovered any signs of evil, he would not hesitate to act. The next morning, Kuro, like a mother who needed to dote on her 2 children, got up early and prepared lunch for all 3 of them. This was the first time I had ever seen such a beautifully sparkling bento box. Taking advantage of the moment, Nico snatched a bite but was hit for that action. I was inexplicably bothered by a cleaning robot, so Nico struck it to make it release me. Kuro felt a little uncomfortable because it seemed like I was only focusing on my personal life without making any effort to prove my innocence. Kuro was determined not to take his eyes off me for even a moment. During class, the teacher asked who Kuro was, and I lied, saying he was a transfer student. Neko then inexplicably appeared in the middle of the class, intending to smear mud on Kuro's face, but was caught red-handed. How audacious of her. The teacher again asked about this strange student. And once again, I said he was a transfer student, so now the class has 2 transfer students in one day. At lunchtime, Kukuri was surprised that I brought my own lunch, making her effort to prepare an extra box for me in vain. I seized the opportunity to tease Kuro, calling it a love bento, which embarrassed Kuro to the point where he drew his sword, ready to attack the scoundrel. Meanwhile, Neko had finished her bento and decided to ask Kukuri for some, but immediately regretted it because it was all vegetables. After that, I continued to search for information, examining the blurry picture of my doppelganger, but I could not confirm its identity. Early that morning, a classmate also found the video clip and advised me to turn back before it was too late. I had to pretend to be ignorant to ask for the clip. At that point, Thon Talk had discovered information about the criminal that Shish Talk was looking for, and they tracked him down to the school I attended. After that, I came up with a way to prove my innocence. I just needed proof that when the culprit appeared in the video around midnight, I was not at the scene. Kuro was suspicious because no one could prove that I stayed at the school all night. However, I remembered that many things happened that night, especially involving Miko. She was always by my side, so she would definitely confirm that I am a good person. But Kuro rejected the idea of letting a clueless, foolish girl like her testify, insisting that she would be considered an accomplice. I remembered I stayed up late that night to prepare for the school festival, so I was confident I could find someone who saw me. After a while of struggling, the three of them finally prepared the costume for the play, making Kukuri worried. Meanwhile, Mikoto's group had also identified the location of the principal. Yata immediately rushed out alone without waiting for any plans. That fateful night indeed had many events. Kukuri was confessed to by another male student on the tower in a spectacular scene before many people. She refused without hesitation, leaving the boy crying after his first heartbreak. Kukuri tried to forget about it, but was reminded again, which made her uncomfortable. But my real purpose was simply to ask if she saw me wandering around at that time. Unfortunately, Kukuri wasn't sure because I kept appearing and disappearing. After the confession, the student council intervened to resolve the issue. I think the student council might have seen my face, so I went to ask the president, but she couldn't remember because she didn't care about such a trivial matter. Who in this world, busy with heaven and earth, would pay attention to an unknown person like me? She mused. However, the incident was reported because a large fire broke out that night. Many photos were taken by the photography club, but I searched and searched but couldn't find any photos of me, not even by accident. This made Kuro increasingly uncomfortable with me, warning that if I didn't find evidence soon, he would definitely take action. After that, Kukuri asked Kuro to help her take some things to the teacher's office. Hearing that, I remembered another opportunity. I asked the teacher to see the list of students who went out that day, and my name was not on it. This proved that I never left school that night, and therefore could not be the culprit. The feeling of relief was overwhelming. Anyone who wants to enter the island must go through the automatic gate system. Therefore, if my name is not on the list, it means I am still on the island. After that, Neko asked for food as it was time to eat, and I went to buy from the vending machine. But Kukuri had to buy it for me because I once again forgot the payment phone provided by the school. Kuro asked Kukuri if it was possible to leave the island without a phone, and Kukuri revealed that I didn't need to be keyed in at all. I have my own way out. Kuro decided to launch an attack. But I pleaded for another chance. Kuro thought I was trying to make a fool of myself, but Neko stepped forward to defend me. Seeing them protect each other softened Kuro, reminding him of his former servant, who had protected him like that. He didn't attack. I truly told the truth that many things happened that night. Suddenly, Kukuri remembered that she met me in the gym at exactly 12:30 that night. Together, we discovered a huge hole in the ceiling, and she even secretly took a picture of me and set it as wallpaper. From then on, Kuro concluded I was innocent. There was no way I could have traveled from the crime scene back to school in less than an hour. Neko and I rejoiced, dancing together. While the three of us returned to focusing on our studies, the whole class was amazed at the much faster progress under Kuro's guidance. However, when I returned home to relax, I found a blood-stained shirt in my closet. The memory of that night suddenly rushed back, making me wonder if I was truly the perpetrator without knowing it. Neko returned surprisingly, and although I tried to stay calm, inside I was extremely frightened. Neko also sensed my unease but deliberately said nothing. Meanwhile, two members of the Red Clan, Yata and Rikyo, arrived at the school, but were stopped at the gate because they needed a PDA to enter. The next day, the school festival was taking place, and Kura took on a leadership role, organizing everyone for the event. Seeing Kukuri's torn sleeve, Kura unhesitatingly offered to mend it. As I sat in stunned disbelief, unable to believe that even after proving my innocence, I could still be the actual culprit. So why was there a blood-stained shirt in my closet? Still, I pushed that thought aside, trying to act normally with my friends. The Green Clan had also arranged to come to the school to confirm my identity. Siri requested Fushimi to accompany him for verification, and although reluctant, he obeyed the order. Yata and Rikyo stole two students' phones and used them to sneak in. Once inside, they searched everywhere asking about me, but no one knew me. No one could have imagined that I and the other two had snuck out through a secret passage to buy more fireworks to replace the ones lost during the night of the pursuit. At that time, the Green Clan's delegation had also arrived and negotiated with the principal, promising not to cause trouble as long as the school provided information about me. Otherwise, Siri would escalate the issue legally. The principal hesitated because the Green Clan was looking for a student without even knowing his name. Only his vague appearance made this incredibly difficult. Suddenly, Fushimi went outside. Meanwhile, the two Red Clan members were still wandering around looking for me fruitlessly. At one point, Fushimi and the two almost met, separated only by a fountain. Fushimi then went to the student council, took a student's name, and used their authority to compare the student's file, with the culprit in the video. While waiting for the results, Fushimi noticed Yata and Rikyo were cornering two girls. Yata wouldn't let Rikyo speak to the girls, threatening to beat him if he did. In the end, Yata just asked the boys what they'd been up to. Rikyo began to doubt Yata's strange behavior. Just then, Fushimi appeared and mocked Yata's old weakness for girls, a weakness he could never get rid of. Yata was furious at the betrayal, declaring that he wasn't even worthy of mentioning his name. Fushimi patted his shoulder and said that he was simply different from them, so leaving was natural. He only wondered how the two of them got in when security here was so tight. Fushimi continued to provoke Yata, calling him by the hated name Misaki, which only increased his anger. Rikyo tried to calm Yata, reminding him that any mistake now would render all of Mikoto's efforts meaningless. Yata calmed down a bit, but Fushimi continued to insult Mikoto, pushing Yata to his limit. Unable to stand it any longer, Yata sprang into battle, flames erupting around him as he spun like a whirlwind and attacked. Fushimi blocked with precise sword techniques, and the two clashed violently, trading blow after blow without either gaining the upper hand. Yata scoffed that Fushimi had grown weak, but Fushimi was actually growing stronger, using both red and blue flames to counter the steel. The fight escalated until Fushimi threw 3 kunai, throwing Yata off balance and cutting him off from his flames. Rikyo tried to intervene, but 2 half-moon blades flew towards him, forcing him to retreat. Yata gathered all his strength, the flames around his body burning fiercely when suddenly Seri, the commander of the Red Clan and Munakata's right-hand man, arrived to stop the fight. She reminded them that their purpose here was not to fight. Realizing Yata was the vanguard of the King of Blood, nicknamed the God of Surfing, Seri successively introduced herself as the cold-hearted, infamous witch and requested they retreat peacefully. But Yata was too angry to listen until she revealed that Mikoto was alive and well. His greatest daily concern was whether the food tasted good. Yata relented, suppressed his anger, and left the scene. Fushimi, however, was reprimanded for provoking violence and accessing school files. Nevertheless, Seri still requested the information he had discovered. Before leaving, Yata decided to ask one more person. This time, he was determined to ask a girl, so he wouldn't be mocked again. The person he approached was Kukuri, but she told him that she had no idea who the person in the photo was. Fushimi, unable to confirm my location and the school's internal system, began to suspect that the culprit was simply in disguise as a student. Meanwhile, Mikoto was haunted by strange dreams. In them, he destroyed places with a terrible flame, to the point where he risked burning himself. He even dreamed of the face of the one who killed his comrade. At that time, my group stopped at a restaurant because Nico claimed she was hungry. But I remained unfocused, trapped in the thought that I might actually be the culprit. Among the countless people, only one had my photo. Kuro still hadn't completely cleared me of suspicion. If I wasn't the murderer, then I had to find out who framed me. As I looked around the restaurant, I noticed that the walls were plastered with photos of familiar customers. Even Kukuri's group had their photos there, but my own face was missing. The owner recognized me as a regular, but was just as surprised that no photo of me existed. At the same time, Seri came to visit Kusanagi. This time, she wasn't wearing her usual stiff uniform, but dressed like a refined lady. She was annoyed that Kusanagi had revealed his alias, the Careless Wizard, to that group. But she hadn't come just to drink. Seri expressed her concern about Mikoto's ever-increasing power if he were to lose control again. The map of Japan might need to be redrawn. Kusanagi replied that this was precisely why Mikoto had sought out Munakata's clan. He simply wanted a peaceful night's sleep without worrying about the danger he posed. Kusanagi then shared about a friend he and Mikoto once greatly respected, who had now passed away. 8 years ago, that person had gone all out for Mikoto, wanting only to become his subordinate when Mikoto became king. He was once beaten up on the street and had to be hospitalized. Such was the price of being near someone as powerful as Mikoto. Mikoto furiously went to confront the attacker, but the young man asked him to break his leg instead. Strangely, the violent Mikoto actually complied, although he did give the young man a forceful pat afterward. During this time, I was still struggling with my identity. My memories were vague and incomplete. Kuro suggested calling Kukuri for confirmation, but Nico acted suspiciously, forbidding me from calling, insisting that we should go back and ask her directly. When asked why, she simply replied that she didn't like it, then turned into a cat and ran away. When I called Kukuri, she suddenly claimed not to know who I was and had never met anyone with that name. Her tone was not joking at all, which immediately caused suspicion between us. Kuro grew more suspicious and wanted to return to the school to confirm. I tried calling home, but the operator said the number I dialed did not exist. I wondered if I had dialed incorrectly or if I was lying to myself. Kuro thought my head was the problem. Going back 3 years, Mikoto was then an unmatched king with absolute power. In the clan, there was a man named Tatsuka. It was Tatsuka who was killed. In Homura, Tatsuka was cheerful, lively, and kind, much like myself. He wasn't a fighter, but everyone loved him like family. Although weak, he earnestly wished to become Mikoto's subordinate, believing Mikoto's power was not for destruction, but for protecting others. Mikoto recalled Tatsuka repeatedly inviting him to eat taiyaki. After a few years, Mikoto became king, and until 3 months ago, everything was still lively and normal. Tatsuka had many hobbies, and he had even just bought a new camera. He often played guitar and sang for everyone. However, Tatsuka was murdered right in front of them just a week ago, leaving Yata in unbearable grief. Kusanagi handed Tatsuka's camera to Mikoto. At the same time, Kuro and I returned to where I used to call home, only to find it was just a sports field. I began to doubt if I was truly Yashiro, or if Yashiro had never even existed. The more I tried to remember, the more my memory became empty. In desperation, I asked Kuro to end my life, because my existence seemed meaningless if no one in the world remembered me. Kuro prepared to strike. But then the words of the late priest Ichigen came back, stopping him. Kuro decided that I had to fight to discover my true identity. We had to uncover the secrets behind everything before making any decisions. Kuro wouldn't let me make a blind choice when there were still too many unknown factors. I was deeply moved by his words. Just then, the stadium lights turned on, and the colorless ones surrounded us, ordering our arrest. Kuro refused, so Seri ordered his men to draw their swords. Neko, who was nearby, suddenly appeared and created an illusion, turning the stadium into a bustling city to help us escape. The colorless ones fell into chaos, but Seri quickly realized it was all an illusion. As Neko prepared to lead the two of us out, Seri stopped them. Kuro rose to fight, declaring he wouldn't even draw his sword. That sword wasn't meant for slicing people like Seri. Even without drawing his weapon, he could fight evenly with her, putting her in a pinch. Fushimi immediately reported the disturbance to Munakata. At that moment, the sword of Damocles appeared in the sky, shattering the illusion. From afar, Munakata approached, summoning his sword while gradually dispelling the illusion. With just a stomp of his foot, he dispelled Nico's power, forcing her back into her normal form. Munakata explained her abilities, realizing she was a hidden strain with extremely dangerous illusions. Kuro decided to stay behind to buy time for them. Neko agreed and pulled me away. Bound by his own rules, Kuro refused to draw his sword. Munakata pressed him, trying to force him into an all-out battle. He didn't even draw his own sword, instead attacking with the sheathed blade. Without a weapon, Kuro stood no chance against the king and was quickly defeated, helpless while on the run. I suddenly stopped and looked back. For some reason, Munakata smeared Kuro under his foot, dismissing his former retainer. He scorned Kuro's late retainer as a failure unworthy of being king, believing his existence only destabilized the balance of power among kings, an eternal stain in Munakata's eyes. And now, Kuro voluntarily chose to become my pawn, believing I would be the new king. Munakata suspected I might be a schemer, knowing Kuro would be by my side until the Judgment Day, and thus I could simply use Nico to deceive Kuro, keeping him as a bodyguard. Perhaps all of us were just pawns on my chessboard. Even Kuro himself knew this, but he continued nonetheless. Kuro had been by my side long enough to understand my nature. Suddenly, I turned back, not wanting to abandon my friends. At that moment, I apologized to Kuro for lying. I summoned the king's sword and unleashed an attack. My sword glowed white, its power on par with Munakata's. Munakata raised his hand to block, but couldn't. However, it was all just a small blow to create an opportunity for Kuro to break through and escape. Before long, he shattered the Tokugawa clan's defenses and ran outside. Suri ordered Fushimi to call the police. All three ran into an alley, though Kuro's condition looked bad. I revealed that this battle was just an illusion created by Neko. Kuro explained that Neko's abilities weren't just creating illusions, but also manipulating memories, embedding familiarity into people's minds right from the first meeting. I was accepted into the school thanks to Neko. She altered the memories of my classmates and even my own. Now, I beg her to restore my true memories so I can find out if I am truly the person Kuro is looking for. Kuro urged me to think carefully, but I was ready to take responsibility for everything I had done. Back on that night, Nico was in the equipment room when I fell straight from the sky into the school's gymnasium. She found me, and seeing my smile, she felt safe. Neko accepted me, gave me a fake memory and a name. When Kukuri ran in upon hearing the noise, she saw me but didn't know who I was. Neko used her power to weave me into the memories of my classmates, and even into my own recollection. But that's all Neko showed me. Of course, I want to see more. Neko wanted me to promise that if I saw the truth, I wouldn't abandon her. I promised, as she revealed that before that moment, I had been ejected from a ship and fell straight into the gymnasium. I wanted to know who that person was. When I looked up at the sky, the ship appeared again. The next morning, the three of us stood on a wide open field, breathing in the fresh air. I said that even though there were too many lies, the time I spent with everyone was real, and I cherished it. With my two friends, I returned to the bridge leading to the school for the last time to say goodbye, because it was once the place I called home. I swear I will carry the memories of this place in my heart. Although my past is still hazy, I swear I will uncover it as soon as possible. Kuro urged us to leave before the Green Slayer discovered our location. The three of us then decided to live freely, happily, and without being constrained. Munakata's plan had made capturing me their top priority. The difficulty was that I had two trusted companions, and no one could have imagined that they would escape even Munakata's confinement. They even managed to get past Fushimi, the most skilled pursuer, leaving no trace on any surveillance map. Munakata was sure they were not the type of people to be easily cornered. Suddenly, Fushimi knocked on the door reporting that a search party had been attacked. Their PDAs were stolen, and the victim identified the attacker as Kuro. Munakata understood this was a message and ordered Fushimi to investigate. Indeed, a piece of paper with the number 14 was found. Fushimi, Seri, and Munakata sat in silence. At the appointed time, I called. I had hidden my location so they couldn't track me down. I asked Munakata to tell me who was on the ship, because that person was the real culprit behind Totsuka's murder. I want to negotiate with Munakata that if he can capture the person on the ship, then I will appear. Munakata was unwilling to agree because no one could guarantee that the other two would not come to my rescue. Munakata deliberately stalled, speaking circuitously to give Fushimi's squad more time to hunt us down. Just as I thought the negotiation had failed, a moment later, Munakata changed his mind because Fushimi had tracked my location, and Munakata continued to stall his men. Moving in, Munakata suddenly agreed to capture the Silver King, Adolf, who was also the first king, in exchange for my group appearing whenever they wished, as long as all three appeared together. However, contrary to Munakata's words, Fushimi brought his men close to the truck where my group was hiding. His subordinates hesitated, fearing they couldn't defeat my group. Angrily, Fushimi yelled, asking why he had to drag along these useless fools. Then he revealed to them that I didn't even have real power, so they had nothing to fear. They charged into the truck, but when they opened it, my group was nowhere to be found. All that was left was a mobile phone and a spare battery. I left these things behind to deceive the four Scepter Kings and buy us time to escape. At that moment, all three of us had boarded a raft on the river, and it was Kuro who discovered the danger and saved us. Fortunately, he had a strong sense of Munakata's decisive nature and remained vigilant. All three decided to continue to their next destination. After failing to capture me, Munakata decided to honor the agreement and shift his focus to capturing the Silver King. An emergency state was declared, mobilizing an unusually large force, a rare occurrence. They sent 3 messages to the Silver King, but received no response. Munakata simply requested that they follow procedure. Seri suggested they ask permission from the Emperor King first, but Munakata knew he would never agree, so he insisted on reporting afterwards, willing to take full responsibility himself. When asked why he was going this far, Munakata explained that it wasn't because of his agreement with me, but because he suspected the Silver King was involved in some recent incidents and was acting suspiciously. The ship's route had long been fixed. However, recently it had been changing unusually, a clear sign of something abnormal. At first, Munakata thought it was simply a change of route, but because he had connections in air traffic control, he asked them to check. A ship will only change course in case of an accident on board. So, what made this one change course so often? Moreover, last night it was seen wandering near the stadium where they fought, and one of its courses also passed through the scene of Totsuka's murder. Munakata then ordered his entire unit to apprehend the Silver King on charges related to the death of Totsuka, a member of the Mikoto family. Meanwhile, Neko is tracking the activities of the colorless king. Before long, a helicopter took off in full formation. A unit would approach the airship and its captain would issue a warning. If there was no reply within a few minutes, or if the capture failed, they would fire unguided missiles. The Silver King, seeing the guests, was ready to welcome them. He immediately grabbed the girl in his arms and jumped with her as a mockery, then threw her aside so that she lay on the floor. Kuro and I stole one of the colorless king's helicopters at that time. Kuro asked me about the identity of this first king. Even Kuro had never met him, only heard about him from Ichigen. Of the 7 kings, he is a special person, much like the Gold King. This man is called the Silver King and is shrouded in mystery. Because of him, even the Gold King, who controls finances, is only ranked 2nd. The Silver King controls the heavens and is considered the leader of the kings, while the Gold King controls the earth. At that time, Neko playfully shone the searchlight everywhere, making Fushimi curse. Kuro was afraid that once they got close to the airship, it would be difficult to separate from others. Neko, being too impatient, pushed the control stick forward, causing our helicopter to fly straight towards the Silver King's airship. Just before impact, the Silver King blew up his entire airship, and my helicopter crashed into it, causing a large explosion. No one knows that the Silver King had safely escaped to another location. A decade ago, the Silver King was still serving in the army, conducting experiments to discover the nature of the power that the current kings possess. In one such experiment, they created a small maze and put a test rat in it. When the Silver King transferred his power to it, the rat summoned a sword and ran through the maze. He used that power to easily escape, and surprisingly, he became a leader that other rats followed. The influence of the rat that was empowered spread to other rats as if it could spread to humans. The reason is this power operates like a force field around their bodies, and the result is the formation of a team of super warriors. Even Hwang Kim Vuong was dizzy from this experiment. However, the power was too great, and the labyrinth collapsed. Bakngan Vuong had a sister he loved very much, and both were sponsored by the army for these experiments. Bakngan Vuong didn't like Hwang Kim Vuong much because he only thought of war. But his sister forced him to shut up because when it comes to finances, things like that are unavoidable. Hwang Kim Vuong also seemed to have feelings for his sister, but then Bakngan Vuong lost her in a war caused by the very power he once cherished. He began to see it as a terrible mistake. When the war ended, he abandoned everything, took his ship, and has been running ever since, cutting off all previous ties with Hwang Kim Vuong. In the present, after the ship left, many people still believe it was the ship of some sect or divine power. But the truth is, it was nothing special. Soon, the Lambs of Scepter God found the accident scene. However, no body was found in the cockpit of the downed helicopter. Instead, the two presumed occupants were found unconscious nearby. In the school where I used to be, although their memories have been altered, some of my older friends still feel that something is missing, as if someone was always helping with important things. But they can't remember who. Kukuri no longer has feelings for me, but for the boy Hina, who confessed to her at the top of the tower. Preparations for the festival are still unfinished, and students have discussed using a vacant magic room as storage. Kukuri stared blankly at the vending machine on the ground floor and felt a vague sense of familiarity. When my old friends visited my room, they all felt that someone very familiar had lived there, but no one could call his name. They talked about that boy but couldn't remember who he was. Around this time, Munakata went to find Hwang Kim Vuong, the financial ruler, to talk. Hwang Kim Vuong stood before the carriage where Bakngan Vuong was resting. Their greetings were brief, almost intimate. Hwang Kim Vuong then pulled Munakata into a cosmic space, summoned his sword, and created planets to attack him. He demanded to know Munakata's purpose. Munakata explained he only came to talk, so their confrontation temporarily ceased. He wanted to examine the body believed to be Bakngan Vuong's because Hwang Kim Vuong himself had found it at the accident scene. Bakngan Vuong had lived immortally for half a lifetime without ever dying. Therefore, our sudden death was indeed regrettable. Seeing the overwhelming aura of the Golden King radiating everywhere, Munakata understood and retreated. Currently, he couldn't defeat him, as the country still needed the Golden King. Meanwhile, Mikoto, while in his cell, a phone suddenly appeared and began to ring incessantly. On the other end was a man who claimed to have killed Totsuka, a masked fox. This character was in my old studio. He taunted and lunged at Mikoto, even trying to harass Anna. Speaking of Anna, Mikoto's eyes widened. Seizing the opportunity, the fox spirit entered Mikoto's body, attempting to take his power. But what it never expected was that Mikoto would turn his power back on it, unleashing a massive force that terrified the fox, forcing it to flee in fear. Mikoto's power followed the masked fox back to my old studio, where it exploded with a great bang. After that, Mikoto broke his chains and escaped from prison. Anna, sensing him, knew immediately that Mikoto was returning. His body blazed like a living flame, and he set fire to the prison, causing another massive explosion. The White Scepter tried every method to stop him, but nothing worked. Siri mobilized her entire unit to intercept him, unleashing techniques on him, but Mikoto's overwhelming flame burned them. Her team was crushed under his power, only saved from further damage when Fushimi quickly struck his sword into the ground, diffusing the flame's impact. Trembling, Fushimi drew his sword, but his strength was exhausted. Anyone who tried to stop Mikoto was blown away and defeated by his power. Calm and relentless, Mikoto continued to advance, because once he decided to move, no one could stop him. Outside, the entire Red Clan had already gathered. They knew this move meant Mikoto had found the one responsible for his comrade's death. Meanwhile, Fushimi kept the White Scepter from pursuing. With his team at his side, Mikoto headed towards the school to confront the caller. Inside the school, Kukuri glanced out and saw Mikoto's flaming sword hovering in the air. A thunderous explosion shook the school grounds as Mikoto broke through the security gates. The students panicked, screaming as the Red Clan rushed in. Mikoto threw a fireball that split the clock tower, silencing everyone. Kusanagi, holding a loudspeaker, reassured the students that they were only looking for the boy in the video, that no one else would be harmed, and asked for their cooperation. The group split up to search. Mikoto gave orders, then went alone. While the Hamra members vowed not to harm the innocent, their barbaric and violent behavior makes it difficult to gain trust. Their arrogance scares the students too much to resist, but they also don't want to help. Kusanagi tells his subordinates to respond if provoked, but absolutely avoid harming the innocent and refrain from using violence. The Scepter 4 forces have arrived, so Kusanagi has deployed his subordinates and tightened control over the bridges. Anna continues to work to find the intruder's location, but still hasn't found him. Fushimi's team has been stopped outside. Then, mysteriously, Neko's meowing can be heard. Meanwhile, Sari apologizes to Munakata for letting Mikoto escape. But Munakata doesn't blame her. After all, Mikoto is the third king. Munakata suspects Mikoto's intentions upon arriving here. If the culprit is indeed another king, things will get complicated. The colorless king, the seventh king, is a strange existence. Each generation possesses extraordinary, unpredictable powers. This seventh king is like a joker in a deck of cards, uncontrollable. Munakata makes no move to intervene because he knows the new colorless king, Yashiro, will surely have to face Mikoto. Since both are dangerous and unstable forces, it's best to let them destroy each other, for Munakata's benefit as a third party. Suddenly, snow begins to fall from the night sky. At that moment, Anna climbs a cliff to reach Mikoto but slips. He catches her, pulls her to his side, and she contemplates beside him. In her eyes, people can only be recognized by their colors, and Mikoto's color is the most beautiful of all. She still hasn't found the hidden enemy, but believes that sooner or later, the rat will fall into the trap, so there is no need to despair. At the school, Hamura now has complete control. Anyone trying to escape is caught and forced back inside. Kusanagi warns Yata not to be too stubborn. He knows Yata wants to kill Fushimi, but tells him to be patient for now. Fushimi had previously spoken of leaving with Yata. He said he quit because Homura's actions were childish, and he was tired of their arrogant image. This made Yata furious, especially when Fushimi burned his Homura tattoo with his own lighter right in front of him. Fushimi mocks them for having special powers but acting like spoiled brats. Even now, whenever Yata remembers that scar on the tattoo, it itches with anger. But without orders, he still cannot move. Kusanagi then went to find Mikoto to inquire about Totsuka in the past, and he realized that from the beginning, only Totsuka had noticed something different about Mikoto and trusted him. While others saw him as a ticking time bomb, Kusanagi never thought that being with Mikoto and everyone else would bring him so much joy. Suddenly, Kusanagi asked Anna to go with him, so that Mikoto could resolve his own problem because he had a guest not far away, and that person was none other than Munakata. The two had a conversation, and Munakata wanted Mikoto to retreat and let Yashiro handle him. However, Mikoto still refused. Regardless of any agreement Munakata offered, he refused. Munakata believed that if Mikoto released his power one more time, a disaster would occur and thousands of innocent people would die. But Mikoto simply wanted to take care of his own business and be left alone as usual. Munakata, still considering him a friend, asked Mikoto once more if he was truly sure. Mikoto was completely resolute with his decision. My group had just returned to our temporary shelter, only to find it destroyed and burned down with a stranger who had dug a hole in the floor. They heard news about the school and knew that infiltrating it was nearly impossible, as both the Green Clan and Red Clan had sealed everything off. At least the entire island could become a battlefield. They didn't know what to do yet. Therefore, I thought of listening to the words that Ichigen, Kuro's master, had left behind. However, Kuro believed that what they should do was clear. They would go together to rescue Kukuri and the others. But to do that, they first needed to find where she and the others were being held. Neko didn't want to go, but she reluctantly followed after I persuaded her. The next morning, Yata called Kusanagi to request reinforcements. Mikoto was still thinking about what Munakata had said last night. He wasn't sure what command to give, but he suddenly stood up and left the room, much to everyone's surprise. As for Munakata, even the Green Clan didn't know what to do. Suddenly, black smoke was discovered inside the school, and Munakata had no choice but to order his forces to prepare for immediate action. The students huddled together in fear inside the academy. Yata's unit was ordered to the gate. Before they entered, Seri ordered them to surrender and lay down their arms, but Yata's unit of course did not comply. Seri immediately ordered her troops to charge, and as soon as the Green Clan entered, the Red Clan's detachment was already waiting to engage. The two sides clashed fiercely. At that moment, a series of strange explosions occurred around the academy. Munakata left it to Seri to handle while he himself leaped into the air. At that moment, another explosion occurred. A member of the Red Clan was about to be crushed by a falling stone, and Munakata kindly shielded him. But it turned out that man was a traitor who had come back to kill Munakata. Munakata let go of all the stones, not caring about what would happen to himself or that man. Hearing louder explosions, Kusanagi thought someone might have even brought heavy artillery, and Anna grew more afraid that something terrible could happen. She predicted that the entire place would soon explode completely, so she hurried to check. When she looked around, someone aimed and shot at her. Luckily, Anna was not hit by the bullet. Kusanagi tried to find the shooter and discovered he was in the uniform of the Blue Clan. After the explosions, the students panicked and ran everywhere. Buildings exploded one after another, and Kukuri stood stunned, watching everything collapse. Just as a brick was about to fall on her head, Kuro appeared and saved her. I ran up and introduced myself again from the beginning. While they were happily reuniting, a voice echoed. Mikoto had been waiting for the group there. The news that Anna had been shot by a member of the Blue Clan spread among everyone, escalating the conflict between the Red Clan and the Blue Clan even further. Seri was very worried about Munakata, but the battlefield didn't give her time to dwell on it. Yata attacked Seri relentlessly, but Fushimi suddenly appeared to stop him. Both decided to settle their feud once and for all. Mikoto couldn't understand why I, who had called him here, was now trying to run away. The heat that Mikoto emanated was suffocating. But actually, I was not the one who called him. However, just saying that would not convince anyone. So Kuro stepped up to fight and was easily blown away. Neko used illusions to distract Mikoto. But unexpectedly, Mikoto stomped his foot and the illusion immediately vanished. The girl then scurried away, leaving the men to fight amongst themselves. Kuro continuously attacked to buy time, but no matter what he did, he couldn't repel Mikoto. Mikoto counterattacked. Kuro dodged and rushed into the fray. Mikoto didn't like wasting time, so he turned into a blazing red sun and almost burned everything around him. No matter what Kuro did, it was like he was swatting a fly. Fortunately, Munakata intervened in time. Munakata, still carrying the young man who had stabbed him, with the knife still in him, rushed to stop Mikoto, giving my group a chance to escape to safety. Neko didn't want to run because they couldn't do anything to Mikoto. Even her illusions had no effect. But suddenly, Kukuri saw me get hurt and wanted to check on me. When I got closer, her attitude completely changed and she attacked me with a shard of glass. It turned out Kukuri had been impersonated. He was the one who summoned Mikoto, shot Anna, and attacked Munakata before. He would enter people's bodies and take control one by one. And this time he took the opportunity to enter my body. He wanted me to remember everything I had forgotten and kept muttering, urging me to fall asleep so he could easily control me. I heard Nico's voice calling and realized he couldn't possess me. The masked man returned to Kukuri's body and ran away. Memories suddenly flooded back, shocking me. I gradually remembered everything, including the memories of that war and my story with the Golden King. I suddenly stood up. A surge of energy burst from me, forcing everyone to stop fighting and focus on me. A silver light spread throughout the entire area, illuminating everything. As the light faded, a sword appeared in the sky. My sword had fully manifested, shining brilliantly across the sky. The Golden King also saw and remarked that I really like surprising people. Kuro was terrified, not knowing what was happening. The wounds on my body had disappeared. I reassured everyone not to worry. I myself am immortal. I am the White Silver King, the first king. Adolf, I can be sure of one thing. For now, I've simply been Yashiro all along. The giant sword in the sky disappeared. Fushimi told Yata not to take his eyes off the battle. Both sides then returned to their lively battle. Mikoto and Munakata also didn't want to miss the chance for a serious fight, so they both drew their swords to continue. Meanwhile, I had remembered everything. The colorless king had visited me before and switched bodies. He was thrilled by my immortality and therefore did that. After taking over my body, he threw me off the ship. However, he only took over my body. My heart and soul he couldn't touch, because I am the White Silver King. The White Silver King represents inviolability and immunity to all interference. In other words, it was the colorless king who used that body to kill Totsuka. After that, he switched bodies with the White Silver King and forgave us. Perhaps the shock of the body switch caused the White Silver King to lose his memory. And beside me, he has stolen many other bodies. The power of the colorless king this time might even affect other kings, and Kukuri's body before was no exception. My group set off together to rescue Kukuri. At that time, while the two sides were still fighting, Mikoto's and Munakata's swords appeared in the sky. Their power was incredibly terrifying, especially Mikoto's crimson sword, which looked completely unnatural. This forced Seri to abandon her post to investigate. Just then, Neko and I arrived from above. Seri immediately sensed it and drew her sword to attack, but it was no use. I gave Seri the ability to fly because I wanted her to join us. Yata and Fushimi were still fighting fiercely, but Kuro stepped into the middle of the battlefield to stop both sides under the command of the Silver King. Anyone who dared to step forward would be cut down, but Yata shouted that both sides only obeyed their own king. Kuro asked if they knew why Mikoto had taken over, and why Munakata did not exert his full strength to stop Mikoto, and why both of them were resolving matters while leaving their clans here fighting such a meaningless battle. But Yata and Fushimi did not listen and attacked Kuro. Knowing that words would be useless, he challenged them all to come and take it if they could. Meanwhile, Neko, Seri, and I rushed straight to the room where Kusanagi was watching Anna. Anna reassured him that my group was not an enemy, making Kusanagi feel at ease. Just then, the phone rang and I asked Kusanagi to answer it. The caller was none other than the Gold King, who asked Kusanagi to hand the phone to that foolish Ishiro. The two of them had been friends since they conducted research together. Therefore, I asked the Gold King for help with something. At that time, Mikoto and Munakata had just started and decided to fight seriously from then on. The colorless king, still residing in Kukuri's body, watched from afar to see how they would destroy each other. I explained what I needed from the Gold King, saying that he was the only one who had ever truly understood me, and then asked the two vice commanders, Kusanagi and Seri, to retreat and help evacuate the students. Since the colorless king's goal was the king's, they needed to evacuate as quickly as possible. I am sure that the enemy's power is not limited to what they have seen. Suddenly, the colorless king used psychic communication to threaten all students that he would take their bodies and powers, forcing me to retaliate. I asked Neko to do something for me. I want her to be the first member of my clan. Neko has long considered herself mine, so she readily agreed. The two combined their strengths to send a message to all students. When I appeared, all students were furious, blaming me for being imprisoned here. But some felt a strange sense of familiarity with me, even though they didn't know my name. I told them that it didn't matter if they knew who I was. What mattered was that I knew and cherished each of them as dear friends, that I would protect them and show them the way out. With this, I quickly located the colorless king and sent him a message, a challenge for a direct confrontation and to settle this once and for all. Afterward, Neko collapsed from exhaustion. Having expended too much energy, I handed her over to Anna and her two commanders to care for, wishing them luck before departing. The colorless king, though stunned by what had just happened, regained his composure, waiting for the two kings to finish each other off so he could swoop in and steal their bodies and powers to become the strongest king. But his mind was constantly fractured as Kukuri desperately fought to regain consciousness and call for help. Mikoto and Munakata continued their duel. Mikoto, though injured in the arm, taunted Munakata for being too weak and pathetic, while Munakata retorted that without his glasses, he still hadn't fought at his full strength. The two still hated each other as before, and fought even more fiercely. Meanwhile, Yata and Fushimi, who were waiting, still couldn't overpower Kuro, but the mark on Yata's body began to react as Mikoto neared his limit. The two had once been friends who joined Mikoto's clan together, but now they only argued instead of fighting in unison. A fellow clansman came to drag both of them back, as most of their side had retreated. That clansman even begged the traitor Fushimi and Mikoto himself, who had long stopped caring about his betrayal. That was precisely why Fushimi had left. I then went to find Kuro, telling him it was time to deal with the colorless king. Kuro wanted to know if the plan was successful, and I admitted to relying on him somewhat. Kuro grumbled that even as a king, I was as irresponsible as ever. Then he knelt, thinking I would allow him to serve another king. He made his vow to me, vowing to serve me until his last breath. I didn't like such rigid formalities between friends and told him to get up. The seventh king by now noticed that Munakata had grown weaker, but he wanted to wait until Mikoto grew weaker too before taking him and then Munakata. And once again, Kukuri was possessed and cried out from within her possessed body. Kuro and I arrived in time and demanded that Kukuri's body be released. The phantom was Kukuri and drew out a dagger to shoot secretly, but I had a shield so I wasn't injured. The seventh king threw a flash bomb and tried to run away, but was chased down by Kuro, who knocked him to the ground. For the second time, Kuro drew his sword and declared that the seventh king was unforgivable. Even though he begged for mercy and then turned to curses, Kuro still swung his sword. The seventh king turned to me and lunged at me to possess me. He thought he had swallowed us whole, but I wasn't the same as before. I realized the seventh king had possessed too many times to the point where his personality was disordered, and he no longer remembered who he was. I absorbed and suppressed the soul of the seventh king. After that, Kuro scolded me for acting recklessly with such a low chance of success. I had asked Kuro to take Kukuri away, while Sari and I dealt with the problem of the two kings, but Kuro wouldn't allow it. However, I am immortal, so I'll be fine, and problems between kings must be resolved by kings. Kuro left with Kukuri. I, however, was not fine at all, as I didn't know how long I could control the seventh king. I didn't want the two kings here to share the same fate as me, and the previous golden king had already split paths. Meanwhile, the students had scattered outside, not knowing where Kukuri was. Some believed she was with me, so surely she was safe. Fushimi and Yata returned, and Yata was enraged that their king had been left behind. But since even Anna couldn't do anything, they could only place their hopes on the kings. This was the first time the kings were all appearing to fight. I stood between the two kings and was gradually possessed by the seventh king. I had asked Mikoto to quickly finish off the seventh king, as that was what he wanted to do from the start. Mikoto didn't miss the chance and struck straight at me, unleashing a torrent of immense energy. The power of a dying king burst forth with tremendous force. Kuro took Kukuri away. She still remembered Kuro, but she didn't remember me at all. Kuro felt that was for the best. I had disappeared. Mikoto's sword had completely degraded, reaching its limit and becoming rotten. He apologized for troubling Munakata too much. He had decided to give up and let his sword fall. Realizing it would cause a Kagutsu disaster, Munakata rushed to end Mikoto's life before the colossal sword fell to the ground. Mikoto spoke his last words to Munakata and also wished to apologize to Anna, as he could no longer show her his beautiful colors. After the battle, only Munakata returned. The king's clan rejoiced that Munakata had survived. Neko and Kuro only found my umbrella at the scene. Neko hugged my umbrella and cried. Kuro was also very sad, but they both believed I was still alive because I am the immortal Silver King. They were very happy to have served me as their retainer. The marks on the bodies of the Mikoto clan members then one by one disappeared, forming a beautiful red color for Anna to admire one last time. Fushimi knew that Mikoto was truly an amazing person.